sang this song to me. There was a message in its melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. Tomorrow is another day. Living is the only way. Tomorrow's gonna ever come. Listen to the words of the song. Everything gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be.
Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. I'm Stephanie Wilson Coleman, known as the Empowerment Doctor, and I want to thank you all for looking at this show now, or if you're looking at it later, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to look for it later. I'm sure whenever you're seeing this show, that is going to be interesting and there's going to be something exciting for you to talk about and to share with others. So before we get started, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So, as you all can see, you're listening to A Sip of Inspiration. We do have this podcast streamed on our website, which is champagneconnection.com. Also on their website, you're going to find some merchandise, some paraphernalia, some great books to read. And when you sign in, you're actually going to be receiving a free gift that will help you with your financial life. So, with that being said, I'm going to thank my sponsor, which is Rise. When you need a supply company to rise to your needs, call Resource Industrial Supply Equipment. And they've been sponsoring us now for several years, so we really are thankful to have them. So now, with that being said, and you all can all vouch for me that I didn't forget to do it, because as I always say, my coach always reminds me to do this. So I did it, right? So yay for me. So today, joining me is someone that actually reached out to me, and then I read her bio and I said, oh yeah, we got to have her. We got to talk about this. I love this. And you all know that I just love people who tend to be grounded in psychology and counseling, because I think everybody needs a counselor. I really do. I think everyone, I don't care how good things are going, I think everyone needs a counselor. All right. I just think so. So with me is joining Phyllis. Pronounce your last name for me again.
It's Leavitt.
Leavitt. Leavitt.
That's
so
right.
I want you to find her, and I don't want you to look for that, spell that last name wrong, but you have got to look her up. Okay. This is going to be exciting. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then I'm going to pass it over to her so that she can fill in the blanks. So she graduated from Antioch University with a master's degree in psychology and counseling. She co-directed a sexual abuse treatment program called Parents United in Santa Fe, New Mexico, until 1991, and then went into private practice full time. And as you all know, I really am connected to sexual abuse treatment programs because I was sexually abused. She's been a psychotherapist. You hear me? A psychotherapist. So she's a heavy hitter, treating children, families, couples, and individual adults for 34 years, and has worked extensively with abuse and dysfunctional family dynamics, their aftermath, and some of the most important elements for healing. So she's published 2 books. One has been A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire. And she's written a new book soon to be published, which I cannot wait for, which is America in Therapy, a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis. So she lives in New Mexico and is retired and focused on writing. So thank you for joining me, Phyllis. I am excited about this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm always excited to share and hear your questions and your perspectives, and, just spread kind of a word of hope and healing, which is really what I think the best therapy is.
So you have been in the healing arena for a long time. So, and I think that people need to have some counselors and do some healing. So generally, why do you think people are afraid of healing or afraid of counseling?
That's a great question, because I do think that as much as it's a little bit more acceptable in our culture to talk about psychology and going to a therapist or getting help, I think there's still a huge stigma around psychology and therapy as well. And one of my many goals is to help break that stigma down, because it actually, I think some of the associations are it's kind of girly to be emotional. It's better to be strong. You need to look like you have it all together for the world. It's actually sort of, I think, thought of as being sexy to be like really independent. I don't need anything or anybody. I'm fine on my own. I love myself, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
That we proliferate kind of as images of success when actually they're not. I mean, and yes, it is important to be independent, or, to have some independence and be an adult and cope well and be able to get up after you fall down. But a lot of people in this country and really around the world, there is a lot of abuse and neglect in our country. And having been a therapist for the many years that I've been a therapist, I would say it's epidemic. It's not somebody over there in some other depressed neighborhood. It's people like you and me and our neighbors and people we work with. Sexual abuse is rampant in our country. Addiction is rampant in our country. Physical violence is rampant in our country. Gun violence is escalating. And so, really, it's a very common problem. And part of the many, illusions that I'd love to help dispel is that it's a sign of weakness if you need help, because it's anything but that. Asking for help and being open to be vulnerable and share both the things that have hurt you and the ways that we might have hurt other people ourselves takes strength, and it takes courage, and it takes perseverance, and it takes, opening up to a different point of view than the one we might have been conditioned to have that's not working. What we're doing isn't working. So, can we open ourselves to look at it a new way and be accountable for ourselves in the ways that we need to be accountable? And so, that I'll say this quickly, and then I want you to jump in. Everything that I learned about being a psychotherapist and treating people, whether it was individuals or children or teenagers or couples, what we've really learned in the field of psychology is that you really have to know family systems to understand the individual. We have to understand what conditioned us, the role models we had, the values we learned, the images that we've taken in for men and women, what success is defined as, how people are supposed to deal with conflict. We learn these in our family of origin. We learn them in our community families. We learn them in our national family. And so one of the premises of my book is to take that lens of everything we know from family therapy and look at the family of America through that lens, so we can begin to understand some of the violence that's going on, the escalation in hatred, in exploitation, in the huge gap in income and poverty levels between the growing poverty. There was just an article in the New York Times today about how child poverty has vastly increased over the last year. These are alarming statistics for our country. So looking through the lens of family therapy, of how can we understand this and what can we do about it?
I know when you looking at the news or any of your programs, all of those things seem to be focused on particular communities when they talk about it. So they only talk about these kinds of issues or dysfunctions as occurring in the families that are poor, or families that are minority. And
Right.
we know that's not the truth, but how do we get America to embrace the fact that whatever is going on in that family is going on in all families, pretty much?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of issues involved with that, but one of them is to understand that whatever is happening in America, if there's an escalation of violence and the shooter happened to shoot somebody in Los Angeles and I don't live there, it still affects me. Just like if there's violence in my family of origin, but I'm not the person beaten or sexually abused or yelled at, I'm still affected by the violence around me. Either it's a role model that tells me it's okay to behave that way and that the perpetrator is not going to get prosecuted. So I take that in. Um, or it affects me because, and I've shared this story a lot, and I'll share it again with you. You know, as you said, I have been a psychotherapist for a really long time. And in all the years that I have worked with people, hundreds of people, it wasn't until the run up to the 2016 election and all the hate speech that started going over the news and all the personal attacks and threats that started, and of course the momentum we know has built since then. But it wasn't until the running up till the 2016 election that I ever had a client come to therapy traumatized by what was going on in our country, talking about it. I mean, people probably have been, but I never had anyone talk about it. And I had a lot of clients telling me they couldn't sleep at night and they were afraid we were going down, you know, a totalitarian path, and really traumatized by what was going on in what I call the family of America. So I think we need to understand that we're all affected. And so, even if I'm not the recipient of violence and abuse, I am affected by it. And the other part of it is because I'm a part of the family of America, I have a responsibility to help. We all have a responsibility to help. It could, any of these things that are happening could happen to any of us. Anybody's child could be shot in an elementary school. There's no protection on that level. So yeah, I think, and the big answer to your question is, I think, to help educate people about what's really going on in terms of the proliferation of what I call mental unwellness in our country on a global, you know, on a national, global level.
So so do you wonder or why it just seemed to blow up in 2016? I know we've been on this path. We've been on the path for a long time. If you read in the statistics or any of the historical data, it's just that it just suddenly blew up. It's like everyone became aware of it.
Right.
So what was happening at that time that would all of a sudden, not only did we become aware of it, it's like we didn't do much to sort of combat it either, because it went on for years.
Right. Well, you know, there's probably people in different disciplines would talk about it from different angles. You know, people who are into technology will talk about the influences of technology, and people who are in economics are going to talk about, you know, the economic trends and all of that. And so my slant is the psychological slant, and I think it includes a lot of the other perspectives, but I'll say it to you this way. This is my understanding. You know, I don't think it just happened in 2016. I think something burst in 2000, you know, in that election period, that, like you said, that was brewing, and that's been there. I mean, discrimination has been part of our histories from the beginning of our country. And economic, you know, extreme economic competition has been part of our country. I think, and this is what I talk about in my book from a psychological point of view, is that when you have more and more people who are totally dependent on larger systems, the economic system, the food supply system, the education system, the medical services system, the transportation system, the employment system, the wage system, when you have more and more people who are not self-sustaining and they're dependent for their livelihood, for their housing, for their medical care, and all the things that I just listed, on a whole network that begins to not serve them largely because of economic, I think the exploitation and the economic disparity that's been growing and legislated in our country. And I'm not an expert on all those topics, but the point that I make is, from a variety of reasons, when you have more and more people who feel like they have less and less power, they're really impacted by that. And what I talk about in my book is that it's an abusive family system that doesn't try to take care of every family member, whether it's an individual family with children or a country that doesn't try to take care of the best interests and provide for all its citizens. And when you have more and more people who aren't being provided for on some level, whether it's active discrimination, or they just cannot climb the economic ladder because they don't have access to education, or because of the color of their skin, or because of their being a woman, or whatever it is, then you have more and more people who are going to be symptomatic of what and show the symptoms of that kind of systemic disempowerment. And often it's more than disempowerment. I mean, it can be outright hatred. It can be outright violation. Or blatant injustice. It can be, all those things on a continuum. And when you have more and more people who are disempowered or who are being abused by the system in some way, what I have found over all my years of working with individual adults is that there's two patterns of response to that. Not everybody fits, any pattern that I'm going to say, but these are general patterns. And one of the patterns is to become helpless and easily dominated. So there are more and more people who can be told what to do and they'll do it because they're afraid, because they've never had a voice, because they don't know how to stand up for themselves, because they're afraid there's going to be retribution if they, if they rebel in any way. And then you have the other half is the people who identify with the aggressor and align with the bully on the playground. And what I think is happening in America, and I actually think this is happening all over the world, but I talk about America because I live here. And this is the culture that I'm the most familiar with. What I think is happening is that we're seeing more and more people who actually feel powerless. And the choice for them is to identify with the aggressor or submit. And some people will not submit. And so they often identify with the most aggressive. They become like the most aggressive. And unfortunately, what we're seeing in the news and in politics in our country is that there's a lot of reward for doing that. There's monetary reward, there's power reward, there's influence reward. And so basically what I'm saying in my book is that we have the dynamics of abuse operating in our country, not everywhere, not every person by any means. There are wonderful people doing amazing humanitarian things in this country, but they're not on the news for the most part. The news is sort of like the Coliseum. Let's look at who we can slaughter next in the view of the public.
Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. It's like they're slaughtering any and everyone they can. So you go to other platforms just to get some feel-good news or some good news. Yeah. So I think that's why people tend to just sort of veg out on the internet now, because they're tired of that. And as you said, they don't know what choice they want to make. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so part of my book, the second half of my book really is, what have we learned in the field of psychology that could help us? What could we bring to our country that are some of the principles of healing, of good communication, of taking care of one another, of working on ourselves so that, we can heal our own wounds? Because when a person heals their own wounds, they're much more likely to be constructive, peaceful, cooperative, and considerate to the people around them. It's our wounds that cause the greatest dysfunction. And so, that's where the principle of individual therapy would apply to, I say apply to our nation. One of the things that happens in most therapy, in any in-depth therapy, is we're going to look back at our conditioning. What happened to me when I was a little kid? What did I learn about my body, about sexuality, about boundaries, about what was expected of me? How are people supposed to deal with conflict? Did I learn that, I'm supposed to win the battle? Or did I learn that I'm supposed to sit down at the table and listen and try to work it out with whoever I'm in disagreement with? Well, I don't know anybody who learned the second. I don't. I think there's people who did learn that, but for the most part, I think we have a culture where it's like, who wins? And that actually doesn't work, because what we really want is love. What people really want is love. They want to belong. They want to feel valued. They want to have other people cooperate with them, and they want to learn how to cooperate so that they can have relationship. We're wired for love and connection on a scientific level. And when we don't have it, we are emotionally ill. And that's what our society is demonstrating. We don't have the love and connection as a country, neighbor to neighbor, that we need to survive here.
So at this pace, then, because it has really escalated between 2016 to 2023, and that's a short period of time.
Right.
That's like 7 years. So at this rate, coming back to love and coming back out of some of the places we've dug into are going to take us a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and when you're dealing with active bullies, for lack of a better term, how do you convince them to have to explore counseling, to look for the goodness in themselves and in others? Because you, like you said, you do have to look for it in yourself first, and generally, just can't find it inside of themselves.
Right.
So how do you get them to do that? How do we? And since it's, we're all over the country, we'd have to do it person to person, house to house. So how do we start that?
Well, I think we start that with education about what's really happening, because I think in our country, what we're being fed, and we have been for a very long time, is that these are ideological issues. The political divide is based on belief systems, when in fact, people who starve others, who steal from others, who sexually assault others, or who malign, one of the genders, or disabled people, or a race of people, that is mental unwellness. It's not a political issue. It's not an ideological issue. It's a mental health issue. And so I think we have to educate, as many people as we can to understand that there's this enormous gap between what we all want in our own lives and sometimes what we vote for in terms of what we condone and allow institutions of power to perpetrate. So I don't know anybody who wants someone to break into their house with a gun and shoot them. I don't know anybody who wants their child to be kidnapped. I don't know anyone who wants their bank account to be destroyed or who doesn't want to be able to make a living wage. We don't want those things, but we legislate them for other people. We don't mind if it happens to somebody else, as long as we get ours, kind of. And that gap is not an ideological gap. There aren't people out there who are less deserving. That's not true. So we have to understand that is a psychologically disturbed state that would do to other people what we would never want to have be done to ourselves.
That is true. That's right. And a lot of that is going on with, allowing, or not allowing any method to sort of help adjust some of the discriminative practices that happened in the past. So there's no method or no strategy to address that. It's just like, oh, well. But as you said, there are other people who would not want to have experienced that. Or so they decide that, oh, that didn't really happen. So let's change the history books because that really didn't happen. But as a psychotherapist, you're letting us know that we can change what we want, but it happened and it's inside of us and it needs to be looked at.
And one of the things that I think that is really important, and it goes back to your last question, I don't know that we can convince anyone not to be a bully. I don't think that that's how it works. But what I do think is that there's something really valuable about the model of truth and reconciliation that happened in South Africa, because there was enormous violation of human rights in South Africa, and people were murdered and tortured and discriminated against. And I did some reading on the truth and reconciliation model, and what I discovered was it wasn't perfect. But what it created was a safe place, as safe as we know how to do, for both victims and perpetrators to tell their stories and own their truths and be heard. And I think in our country, one of the things that's really sad about our criminal justice system is that we don't make it safe for perpetrators to tell their stories and get help. They're not perpetrators by accident or because they were born flawed people or because they're sinners or for any other reason. By and large, and I don't remember all the statistics that I read when I was writing my book, but it's more than half of the incarcerated population has a history of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So we're basically punishing the people who have already been hurt, and instead of our criminal justice system being dedicated to rehabilitation. There's many people out there who could be rehabilitated. Maybe a serial killer, we don't know how to rehabilitate, and they just have to be separated from society. But we can still know that they weren't born that way, that something happened to them. And it probably wasn't just in their family. It probably was in their community and in the larger social structures that hurt people or help people, depending on whether they're constructive or not. And that's where we have a social responsibility.
I know a lot of people are holding on to just an experience of sexual abuse, and they're keeping really quiet about it, and they don't talk about it. And they realize that it probably colors every decision they make, but there's no safe space. And then in today's society, everything is expensive, and insurance companies aren't covering a lot of the counseling that's needed. So
absolutely.
So what would you suggest for that? Because we definitely need some suggestions, because we need some change.
Yeah. Well, one of the big things that I think, that we have to look at, just like a family, an individual family needs to look at where they put their money, where they put their time, where they put their energy. If you had a family that was spending their grocery money on AK-47s, you'd say there's something wrong with them. Why aren't they providing for their children? Why are they spending money on weapons of destruction? And I'm not talking about somebody who's living in a war zone, obviously. But the same is true for our country. We spend billions of dollars on weaponry. We have the resources to feed everyone. We have the resources to make therapy and treatment and help for addiction and mental illness and family dysfunction something that we fund because we care about people. What if we reallocated our resources to taking care of each other? We'd have a different world. We'd have a different country and have a different world. And there's nothing stopping us from doing it except our belief systems and our prejudices.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who have more money and assets than they would use up in 25 lifetimes. And then there's some who are just trying to get it through the day.
Yeah.
And we're all in America, which is supposedly the land of the free.
Yeah. Yeah. Supposedly.
Yes. So when we look at the severity and the dangers that we face from this divisiveness, if we don't do something, where do you think we're going to be in 20 years?
Well, I what I think is that we are definitely in danger of going extinct. Honestly, I think we are. I think if we don't reprioritize taking care of the earth and addressing climate change and addressing this sort of unstoppable impulse toward war and the use of weapons and hatred that we justify killing other people. I mean, it just blows me away how much money is invested in how to kill more people at once. This is like an extreme end of mental illness that we're doing, and we condone it and we justify it. And I say that war is premeditated murder, because that's what it is. You know, my husband and I were just watching. I think it's a fairly new series. It's called The Heart of Invictus, and it's about. I think it's kind of like Olympic Games for disabled veterans, and it was started by Prince Harry, and it's so deeply moving because it's much less about the Olympics themselves, you know, the races or the swimming or the rugby or whatever. And it's about the people's lives. It's about the veterans' lives and what war did to them and what war did to their families, which is just, it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Um, and one of the things that's very beautiful about this documentary is that they consider PTSD as a disability that's a result of war. So somebody might have, their body might be working okay, but their nervous system is shot. And just to hear these veterans tell their stories, it's like, why would we ever want to go to war again? Why would we ever fund war? Why don't we fund everything we know about how to make peace, about how to work it out, how to resolve our problems, how to listen to each other, how to try to save this planet together? Because I really think that's what we need.
Yes, we need that. I think that even if one change we could make is change what we see on television and what's available, because
Absolutely.
we turn on the news, it's all downhill from there. But there are a lot of great things that are happening
That's right.
in the country that we are never made aware of. And if we could just know about those things, we could get some hope to some people, you know?
I think that's 100% true. And one of the things that was beautiful about this documentary that I just mentioned is that that's what these Invictus Games were designed to do, is to bring hope, to bring community, to bring people together, to work on a team and feel like, even with their disability, I mean, people playing basketball from a wheelchair, it was beautiful. The bonds that were created and the, you know, these people that started out with like just so down, and to see them smile at the end of the documentary because somebody cared enough to do something for them. And one of the things that I was reading about when I was doing some of the research for my book is that actually in America, there's an inordinate amount of volunteerism going on.
Yes.
People helping their neighbors,
Yes.
contributing money, setting up programs for people that need them or children that don't have what they need, you know, and I would just so love to see that on the news every night and have that be, even if there's a mass murder, this is what I would wish. Even if there's a mass murder, I wish the news would not be like sensationalizing it, but talking about, okay, let's find out about this person's childhood. What happened to them? How could we really come together to keep this from happening again? Because nobody becomes a mass murderer who's a happy person, who feels like they belong, who has what they need and is loved. They just don't. So
they don't, right? They don't. Yes, if we could get that in the news, if they could talk about that at the top of the hour, I think that would actually change, because we, as you said earlier, all we see and hear is about the violence, about the wars, about drugs, everything that's terrible, high inflation, no food, no clean water. We don't hear about the number of people who are volunteering, the number of people who are out actually with nonprofit organizations who are actually touching people and helping to make their life better. And I think if we could hear that every day,
yeah, I agree.
See that coming across our phone, then people could say, you know what, I need some help, you know, I need to do something about that. And it would be okay, because we would have examples and we would have seen that people are doing that, but we just don't see people going for help or trying to heal themselves. And it's
and
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and that would be the role model that young people need. I think young people feel so lost. Many of them do. They feel so lost. They're so, behind the technology and what they're supposed to look like online and how many likes they get. And, it just like, what if the role models were really proliferated from the top down in our country of like, help your neighbor, you'll feel amazing. It's a beautiful thing to do.
Yes. And I have started to notice that even on some of the like TikTok stations where they show people helping other people or helping some of the homeless, they get millions of likes because we just don't don't see that much anymore.
Right.
So where would we start if we decided today or to start Monday to have a country that was actually going to participate in healing and participate in making sure that everyone had what they needed and that everyone had a place to go or someone to talk to when they had things that they had to deal with, because we're still going to have things have to deal with because things happen to people.
Oh, absolutely.
So where would we start? How would we start? What would that look like?
Well, one of the things I think is what you're doing. I think programs like yours are helping educate people by bringing all these different points of view to masses of people at a time where we can't even get that kind of information, like in the isolation of our own homes. So I think it's partly education. Like, let's hear from lots of different people. What do you think about how to fix the economy? What do you think about, immigration? What do you think about Medicare or medical care? Bring all the different voices to the table so we actually have lots of opinions instead of having some very slanted point of view be all that we hear in the news and that we're fed that that's right and everybody else is wrong kind of thing. Because that's what the best therapy does. The best therapy helps people actually listen to each other and hear an opposing point of view the way that they want to hear their point of view be heard. We all want to be heard. Everybody wants to be heard. I don't know anybody who doesn't want to be heard. The thing is, we just don't know how to listen. And it's hard when somebody disagrees with you. It's hard when you think the other person's wrong and you're right. It's really hard to do. I mean, it takes a lot of restraint to actually listen to an opposing point of view and not get mad or shut down or walk away or criticize or something, instead of like, okay, tell me more about that so I can understand you better, because I really want you to understand me. And I see how hard this is in my own life, in my relationships. I see how hard this is for people that I've worked with. It's really hard work. So if we could bring that as a role model to Congress, to have facilitators in Congress that are like, no, you need to listen to what this person is saying respectfully. You can't walk out of the room. You can't call them names. You can't attack their wife. I will teach you as a facilitator, not me, but how to listen to your opponent in the way that you want to be heard, because the goal here is to actually come together for the good of the population of the country. Right now, I don't even think that's the goal.
I don't know that they have one. When I look at the feeds, it's like, we're still doing that. It's like, yeah, because it's a lot going on in the country and we have a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And you're right. Instead of talking about this, that, and the third, we need to be talking about, the food supply. We need to be talking about jobs. We need to be talking about guns and what we're going to do with guns. And we know it's a Second Amendment, right? But we need some structure around that amendment. We need to be talking about the various races and the people who live here and how we are affected differently in society. Because if we're going to be true to who we say we are in America, and if we're going to be the world's role model as we think we are, then we've got to do better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've got to do that.
Yeah. And we are a country of immigrants. That's who we are.
Right.
The only people who were here were the Native Americans.
That's right. They were already here, right? Wondering why we came. That's right. So they were, and they probably and I don't know this for sure, but I said if I they're probably sitting there thinking, man, we should have stopped those people a long time ago.
Probably. Yeah.
So in our individual houses, because this is how we're going to have to fix it, one person at a time.
Yeah.
As much as we would like there to be that magical moment, ta-da, where our leaders in Washington get it together, and start listening and actually passing legislation that's good for everyone. So what kinds of steps can parents start to take now with themselves and their children so that we can get to that place? Because it's going to take us doing it individually in our own homes and in our own circle and in our own hearts.
It's really true. It's really true. It starts with the individual and it ripples out. And I think a lot of people don't know the power of their own presence to affect other people. And because I've heard a lot of people say, it's too late for America, or it's too late for the human race. We're just not going to make it. What can I do? What could I possibly do as one person that's going to make a difference? When the truth is we can all make a difference. Every single person can make a difference. If you walk into a store and you smile at someone or they smile at you, instead of, act gruff or mean or, nasty to you, it makes a difference in your life. And you take that home with you and you take that home to your family. So I think we need to know the power of our own mental health to affect the people around us. It's so powerful. And this from all all the millions of stories we heard. Look at all the lives Prince Harry changed with the Invictus games that he created. And he's a big example, but one person, and I'll just tell this story because I tell it a lot. And it's a really good example. My husband and I and my adult daughter went out to dinner. And our waitress just seemed like in a really bad mood, and it just didn't feel good, right? And my daughter looked at her and she said, "Are you having a bad day?" And she kind of acknowledged that she was, but it totally ended the whole thing. Like somebody saw her, somebody cared about her. My daughter asked her a couple questions. I don't remember what they were, and I don't remember what she said. I just know that her whole mood lifted, and she just seemed lighter and more at ease for the rest of the evening that we interacted with her. And you know what? She took that home with her. So if she had kids and she had a husband or she had a dog or whatever she had, she took that home with her. And we don't know the ripple effect of just the smallest kindnesses that we could have toward other people and what they would do. And if we bring them to the workplace and we bring that to the people that we employ or the people that are our bosses, and we bring that to our churches and we bring that to schools, we can all make an enormous difference.
That was fantastic, because I often say that sometimes when people appear to be treating you badly or saying bad things, especially in settings like restaurants or department stores or grocery stores, that's not about you. That's about them. They're going through something. So sometimes if you can just stop and give them a safe space to be able to let all that stuff go, because they don't have any other place that they can let that stuff go. And for some reason, that space felt safe. Just don't make it your stuff. It's their stuff. Just let them let it go. And then when it's over, you'll see the relief in their face.
You will.
You'll see the relief and the peace just all over them, because they had some safe space to say, I'm not doing well right now.
Right.
I'm having a problem right now. Right.
And, in a nutshell, one of the things I learned as a therapist, and I learned this as a client too. I was a client myself for many years. And I had some really traumatic things happen in my own childhood. So I know this from the inside out. This isn't theoretical for me. That that we just don't know what people are carrying. That bad mood could come from, maybe she just left a bad relationship. Maybe she's struggling with abuse issues that she hasn't dealt with. Who knows what the suffering is that another person is bringing with them that might look like anger or indifference or, a bad mood or whatever it is. We just don't know. And so the one thing that I learned as a therapist and as a client is that all the injuries that we have sustained are injuries to love and belonging. The deepest wounds that people suffer from are the wounds around not getting the love they needed, love being betrayed, love being violated, love being lost, and not feeling like they belong to the community, some community of other human beings. And so it's healed with love. So your little spark of love to the person next to you who looks like they're down is healing. It's actually healing.
And I don't think we've thought about it that way. Sometimes people think, oh, this is aimed at me and I've got to respond.
Right.
But love is the response.
Love is the response. And this is hard work. That's why I say to create peace in this world, to create safety for other people, and to generate love in this world is actually the hardest work there is. There's nothing to stigmatize about it. And the only reason why it's stigmatized is because it would take away power from people who abuse power.
I read something the other day that talked about that we spend all of our time making richer people rich and giving the powerful more power. And then we end up being depleted as a result of it.
Yeah.
So when will your book be out and where can people find it?
Yeah. So I just spoke to my publisher yesterday. I can't remember what day now, yesterday. And my book will be out next July. So it's a little ways away, but you can find me on my website, www.phyllislevitt.com, and stay updated. Please sign in and you'll get the news about when my book is available. The ebook may come out sooner. And just to, if you have questions or you want more information, please contact me. I'm on the social media, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and something else. I don't remember what. But I'd love to hear from anyone who's interested in having further conversation.
So I know why you decided you needed to write the book. So from the book, once it's published, what would you like us to do? What would be your call to action to everyday normal America?
I would love it if people would spread the word about my book, not for my own personal acclaim, but because I really believe that what's in my book is not common knowledge and could really be healing and helpful. I had a friend who read my manuscript, and she didn't have abuse in her childhood. And she said she was blown away by what she read because she really didn't know about the dynamics of abuse. And she really didn't know the long-lasting effects. And she really didn't know what therapy had to offer. And so, my request would be spread the word, tell people about my book. And if they are influenced and they're helped by any of the ideas in my book, spread them, do your own healing work. That's probably the most important thing. Do your own healing work. My book is a drop in the ocean, but it's my drop in the ocean of wanting to make a contribution to a better world for, I don't know if you have children. I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren, and I want them to inherit a world that is sustainable and accepting and loving and welcomes all people. I want that.
And I want everyone to do their own work also, so that by the time we finish, then maybe our great-grandchildren won't have as much work to do. So just as I always say, you've got to love yourself. And you've got to be deep and figure out what's going on and do some healing. And I think everybody should have some counseling now. I've said, if you listen to me, you know I believe in counseling. So
Yeah,
everyone should have some counseling. Because sometimes things happen and you bury them so deep till you forget
that's right.
they're there. And as you pointed out, they are there and they're bubbling up and they're
Right.
bubbling up in all of this that we see around us.
And I think for a lot of people too, and I wonder if you feel this way, a lot of people like can be highly reactive or highly emotional, and they don't even want to be. They just feel out of control of themselves because there's such unprocessed pain or trauma or dysfunction just lying buried in their unconscious, and something triggers them and they're gone. I mean, we've probably all had experiences where we've said things, or our voice was really loud when we're like, who is that even coming out of my mouth? And that's one of the values of doing our own work, is to heal those places that can be so automatic and unconsciously driven.
Yes, I know. I've experienced that. Didn't know who that person was coming out of my mouth. I had to backtrack and apologize.
Right.
Because that wasn't fair. It wasn't even about them. It was about me and something else that I was still processing.
Right.
So it's been my experience. If you're still processing something, take your time to process it before you're interacting with other people, okay? Because you don't want to leave a mess and create a mess, because you do have to go back and clean it up.
And that's the important thing. What you said was really key. We all will make a mess at some point. We will. But it feels so amazing when somebody genuinely apologizes. That is healing, and that does take some of the wound away. I know that in my own life, and I know when it's been missing. And when it's missing, the wound stays open. And when and you probably know this for yourself too, when you can find that place in yourself where you can take responsibility for something you did or said and say you're sorry, it brings you back into relationship with other people where there doesn't have to be a wall of protection.
Right. And you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be considerate of other people. And as you said,
won't be. Yeah.
As you said earlier, we don't want to do things to other people that we don't want done to us.
Right.
And
bottom line.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. So think about that. Is this something you would want someone to do to you? And I believe in counseling. So I said that before. So everyone should get some counseling. You'd be surprised how freeing it is. I'm telling you, when you can sit there and tell your stuff to someone who is not going to judge you.
That's right. That's right.
You all just don't know how freeing that is.
That's right. I think that's really a beautiful point too, because it is that space of non-judgment that we learn, and it's hard to come by. It is. We're very judgmental.
Right. That's right. So the title of the book is America in Therapy. It will be out soon, shortly, by the middle of the year next year. But I'm sure that they'll do some publicity around it too.
Oh, for sure.
Powerful title. So I want you guys to be sure that you go out and get that book or sign up for a copy to be released once it's released. And remind them of your website again.
It's www.phyllisleavitt.com, and it's PhyllisLeavitt. Just my name.com.
Perfect. That's going to be easy. Just her name.com. And you can find that book. And then on your other book, is that still available?
Yeah, and those, you can find those on my website or on Amazon, but they're on my website too, under the book section where I have, my previous books. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for being here with me this evening. Is there one last thing to share with us? Because I want people to be able to start to make America great again. And I mean great for real. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
For real.
Yeah. So I say make America kind again.
I like that. Make America kind again. That's what we're going to say. Make America kind again. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is one thing that they could do right now where they are to start to be a part of this Make America Kind Again movement?
Yeah. Two things. I would say, if there's any part of your life that's hurting, find someone. If it's not a therapist is great. If you can't afford therapy or you don't want to go to therapy, find someone to talk to, someone who can listen, someone who you respect, who might be able to give you some, some options, or just have empathy for you so that you're not carrying around whatever your pain is by yourself. So that's one thing, is, just find help. Don't be afraid. It's okay that we need each other. I've had so many clients say, I don't want to be needy. And I say, why? We need each other. We actually really need each other. And it's a wonderful thing to have those needs met by other people. So I forget what my second one was. So that was my first one. Just, remember how much it means to other people to feel acknowledged and loved. It's never too much to say, oh, I really appreciate, what you said the other day to me. That really helped. Because sometimes we just let it all go and people don't know how much they're appreciated or what difference they're making. Or just to say, wow, you look beautiful in blue. You should wear that more often. Just simple acts of kindness light everybody's day up.
That's right. So you all get started with your simple acts of kindness. As I always say, your simple acts of gratitude. So if someone helped you out today, I want you to send them an email or a text message and let them know that you appreciate that thing that they did for you today. Okay. And every day before you go to bed, I want you to make that a habit. Did someone do something for me that was kind? Did someone help me? If they did, even if it's a smile, because people don't have to do or say. Sometimes people just smile and it makes you feel happy. Send them a message acknowledging that they did that for you, because that makes them feel good too. So it's a two-way street. You feel good, they feel good, and then we can pass that on to other people. Because if we keep going on this path, we're not going to last very long, okay? Because I think the universal presence is going to decide it has had enough.
Yeah. And what the beautiful thing is? That all those things that you just mentioned are free. They don't cost anything.
Right. That's right. So make random act of kindness your daily thing to do. That's your daily assignment, just random acts of kindness. And just start now. And there's so much research too about how being kind and grateful and thankful and forgiving is. It increases your health by about 50%. It even makes you 11% richer. I mean, all those things actually work toward making you a better person and leaving you in a better place. And then you've helped someone else too.
Right.
Okay, so I want to thank you again for being here. And you all know to look for the book and the website, because I think it's a great book. So it's America in Therapy. And I can't wait till it's out. So with that, as I always say, may this day offer you just what you need in this unfolding moment. I want you to trust your greatness, and I want you to embrace your power. Be inspired until further notice. Just celebrate everything, good, bad, or indifferent. Just celebrate everything. Okay? Just know that no matter what happens, there's some good in there. Celebrate it. I want you to not go gently into that good night, but find a hero worth dying for and take it. Be the person that you're waiting for. Make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous, and above all else, do it your way. I'm Stephanie Wilson, the Empowerment Doctor. And as I always say, with the right pair of shoes, I can accomplish anything.
Beautiful.
Yes. So we're going to say goodbye. No, we're going to say good night, not goodbye. And I want you guys to remember the book, America in Therapy. Thank you, Phyllis. I really
thank you.
This was fantastic.
Thank you.
And until next time, you guys, life is too short to drink cheap champagne. Bye now.
too short to drink cheap champagne. So I decided to buy me